The most dangerous truth that the world has tried to banish is the one that can't actually be forgotten, because it lives inside each and every one of us. This is the truth of divine feminine power. Inner gnosis, the source of creation that can't be put in a box nor confined to any kind of structured reality that exists in the mind. This truth is particularly dangerous because it doesn't fit into the construction of a world outside of the natural realm. And over millennia, this truth has been targeted in various ways to desecrate the divine feminine energy and create a world of control and power, hierarchies, and governance that reduces the true source of wisdom to a partial extraction of it that achieves a certain purpose. But many of us right now are subtly feeling something is changing, as this divine feminine source of wisdom is reawakening in many people around the world simultaneously. Many people are beginning to feel this dawning of realization internally without coming to this conclusion with their minds, because that's exactly how this divine feminine essence is spontaneously reawakened. It can begin with simply a curiosity, a question, emotional inquiry, when you feel you can't silence that deeper voice of truth and meaning that's already resounding inside of you. And as soon as you start to listen to that voice, you begin to descend into this rabbit hole of deeper self-inquiry and inquiry about the nature of reality, where everything gets analyzed not through a mental, rational process of trying to come to conclusions, but actually by turning off the mind and navigating reality through a sixth sense of intuition, deep feeling, looking for coherence, and then at the same time unraveling why coherence has been lost, both internally and collectively. The further that we descend down this rabbit hole, the more we come to the apparent question, where was this wisdom hijacked along the way? Before we got to this point where we currently are today, a war-ridden world full of boundaries, divisions, the divide and conquer model, which has been plaguing civilization for millennia. At a certain point, though, if we really turn back the clock, we will come to a space where time wasn't linear, and the world was run by harmonic, natural intelligence principles, where the woman was seen as the goddess, the source of wisdom, and divine feminine energy was prevalent to the degree that it was that underlying tone for social harmony, for coexistence with nature and with true embodiment, where the voice, the body, the intuitive signals, all of that gets reclaimed as the natural intelligence, which when applied allows us to coexist in harmony with the one. But somewhere along the way, even after thousands of years of civilizations that were actually already living in accordance with this divine harmonic nature of reality, the matrilineal, matricentric model got hijacked. A separation from that original embodied sense of gnosis started to occur. And this is when the desire for a more ego-driven way of living, being, governing the world began to set in motion a desire for separation from that divine feminine source of wisdom, embodiment, healing technologies, even operating the entire physical vessel as a vehicle of consciousness, began to be lost in translation. The goddess as a symbol of divine feminine power, and really that face of God that operates in an intuitive, creative, deeply inspired, and healing fashion, began to get replaced with a more masculine-coded way of approaching reality and even the divine. The divine feminine was actually associated largely with Sophia, the source of wisdom, and this is where the term philosophy comes from. It's actually philosophia in Greek, which means the love of wisdom. But where did Sophia go? A big hint was arrived at in 1945 when the Nag Hammadi texts were found, over 50 ancient texts found near Nag Hammadi, Egypt. And in these texts, including the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Thomas, the Pistis Sophia, there was a different view of reality that is indicative of a more Gnostic, early Christian way of perceiving the world that did not reduce the divine feminine to anything less than an equal to Christos consciousness. The divine feminine and the source of Sophia was actually seen as the creative power in the universe. Sophia was that source of divine emanation that gave rise to the material realm, a realm in which the feminine creative power was the womb of the universe, which gave rise to the logos, and that logos element actually included feminine wisdom as well. Logos, prior to the establishment of the Abrahamic religions, was not merely mental in nature. It wasn't just the word. It wasn't just the expression of the masculine aspect, which sets in motion this yang energy. It also included, most importantly, this feminine aspect of feeling, an embodied inner gnosis, from which everything really arises. But including the feminine became a very dangerous thing. The early priests of Christianity, including Pope Gregory I, decided that exalting the feminine as an equal symbol of power, divinity, and inner authority would diminish the effect of the religion, as Mary Magdalene was actually an equal to Jesus Christ, to Yeshua. They were equal counterparts in the process of embodying gnosis and sharing these teachings with the world. But including that would definitely set into motion this question of how the woman can also embody her inner gnosis. And if that were to happen, there would be a wave of deeper questioning about the nature of religion and whether or not the religious structure and its hierarchical teachings and everything else coded to establish a disconnect between the self and the divine creator would also need to be analyzed. And this simply couldn't be allowed. And so many texts, such as the Gospel of Mary, were either burned, banished, or hidden away. And only now are we starting to recognize that there is a whole aspect of the biblical history and the lost history of civilization that has been obscured. Because if we were to really see into the heart of that truth, we would see everywhere else where truth was hijacked and where a mystery was created to veil the true essence of power, which only can include the divine feminine as an equal to the masculine source of expression in the physical realm. So why did this really happen? We have to go deeper into the awareness of what the feminine has historically represented and what is lodged within the feminine, which is beyond the feminine form and the expression of a physical woman. It's an energetic expression. It's the currency of divine creativity, flow, the enigma, that ineffable quality of the universe, and the experience that all of us embody that allows there to be understanding without rationalization, deep containment without control, and the ability to express eros as the stream of consciousness and deeply sovereign love. Because the only way for there to be a truly embodied experience of gnosis is for there to be trust in that feminine aspect. It needs to be yielded to. And in this process of giving yourself to the divine feminine source that exists within all of us, we come closer to this heart of cosmic oneness. The feminine is this enigma which can't be solved. And when yielded to, it puts you in the state of egoic dissolution. It puts you in a state where you begin to question things that don't feel right. And whenever there's a lack of coherence, you can address that by first going within and really speaking to that source of truth within the self, which is the feeling state. It's that intuitive clarity that emerges when you trust yourself enough to go inside yourself and really ask, why does something make you feel a certain way? And what might the resolution be if found within and not sourced from outside yourself? The Abrahamic religions were instated to create this split between self and the creation so that people would need the establishment. They would need the external support structures and the sacraments created by the system in order to bring them closer to this state of divinity. But in that, even more of a split was created, where the state of embodied gnosis was just lost, and a kind of amnesia began to fill the collective consciousness, leading people to separate from their true sense of feelings. Hence, the divine feminine is really what Mary Magdalene represented. She was rewritten in the biblical history as a prostitute in order to create the impression that the feminine and that erotic intelligence that naturally flows through her is a source of shame. But really, it's a source of that unbridled, raw, passionate, universal energy that questions and asks why, and actually inquires the deeper source of meaning that emerges by understanding that the nature of reality is meant to create true freedom, true understanding of oneness, and disconnecting from anything that doesn't feel that way. Due to this deeply intuitive and in-touch nature of the feminine experience, women for millennia represented that connecting bridge between the individual and the cosmic one. And this is also what Mother Earth represents. Like I've talked about in some of my recent videos, there is right now a resurrection of this divine intelligence, creating a harmonic field that allows us to remember what it feels like to exist in harmony with the greater one as well. Women represented the healers, those indigenous medicine workers, the ones that understood how the womb intelligence can bring you closer to the intelligence of the cosmic one, the womb of planet Earth and the womb of the universe. Within that, there lies an awareness of everything that brings the self into harmony with the greater ecosystem. Womb consciousness is the origin point of life, the birth and death cycle, and there's something intricately intimate about a woman that's able to understand through herself, through connection to her womb space, how everything coalesces from that point of the experience. That's the 0 point that allows for everything to exist in reality. And on a macrocosmic level, the same thing holds true about the entire universe. And so for there to be control instated, those womb rights and the connection to the womb space and to the cycle of life and death needed to be desecrated. And women were put in a position not of empowerment and seeing how this origin point within them needs to be understood and resensitized, even worshipped, in order to allow for deeper wisdom and harmony to ensue. Rather, this was shut down, and that's what the insurrection unfortunately represents. Tens of thousands of women that were actually healers and midwives and highly intuitive oracles, bringing entire societies closer to awareness of what will allow for the return of harmony in those groups. And now they were simply deemed as witches. They were burnt at the stake, and many of us actually carry a deeply embedded memory of this pain that the entire collective consciousness is still storing. The pain of embodying truth, embodying the voice of feminine wisdom, expressing this because we're afraid of, again, being desecrated, being oppressed, or being banished, as so many highly gifted and in-tune healers and women in general were in the past. Very often, these women were termed heretics and were seen as these outcasts in society because they were disobeying this masculine coded order. But they weren't actually channeling demons or doing anything that implied a disconnect from the divine. In essence, they were more in tune with the non-dual universal nature of divine intelligence and sought to close the gap between the self as a divine vessel and the overall divine order that exists all around us. That gap needed to be existent for there to be control and power waged on entire civilizations. And feminine healers and women that truly embody this sense of knowing that the divinity that we're looking for outside of us has been within us all along have historically been punished for this very act of courage. And so today we see a lot of people that feel deep and dark emotions relative to the feminine nature, but they're not aware really where this comes from. This might not be something that you can attribute to physical trauma or to something that you are seeing happen around you. It's more the absence of feminine wisdom and this embodied gnosis that's triggering a lot of people in a very deep way. It's triggering them, actually, healthily, to reawaken this feminine power. Feminine wisdom is not this selfish, conceited desire to disconnect from anyone or anything, nor is it an oppressive tendency. It's like this divine motherly intention to seed connection, nurturing energy, and equality, everywhere that you share your energy field. It needs to be given the space to flow and create and establish more meanings, because when that source is awakened within the self, naturally it wants to create a multiplier effect. It wants to naturally create a fractal reflection of more of the same harmonizing frequency. And that's how healing really occurs. That's how it really did in the past. Women first needed to embody within themselves that healed reality by actually listening to themselves and creating an inner experience of beauty, devotion, self-respect, and deep inner listening, and only then could they become that oracle for anyone else in society. Everything really that we see in the world today, causing a negative polarity, all the disconnects, depression, loneliness, the pain and suffering that exists in the world, is in some way connected to this divine feminine betrayal, either happening within the self or on a collective level. The two are, of course, irrevocably connected. The entire systems in the world today are construed around this rational mindset. A lot of people are focused on simply working all the time or being in a position where they feel empowered because of their output, and not really how that output makes them feel. We have to really stop ourselves and ask, why are we doing what we're doing? What is fueling us on a deeper level? And if we're afraid of merging with the deeper source of feminine truth and love that exists within us, why is that? Because this wisdom has been hijacked for millennia, a lot of us fear the implications of stepping into our power and actually owning what our intuition wants us to do, what our feelings are informing us, which might involve setting certain boundaries or allowing yourself to express in a way that you might feel stigmatized or people might not understand when you let yourself embody your truly sovereign way of being. And so this is a call to action for a lot of people, because the divine feminine energy feels like this very big, sometimes even chaotic flow. This is not an experience of passivity, and so it's a big misconception when people feel the divine feminine is a passive energy, or like this idle state or a dark state of being, which is manipulative or vindictive. These are all dark shades of the feminine that aren't healthily integrated. A feminine energy that is integrated in either a man or a woman, and even collectively, is a state of true flow, resonance, creation, and empowerment through consistent expression of what that flow is informing. And so our planet Earth, too, is this feminine body. It's Gaia's voice that we hear every time we see different things coming up in the collective consciousness. Mother Earth is always signaling where more harmony needs to be established, even through various cataclysmic events, seismic activity, and things that pop up collectively, which inform us to look more deeply and to see what systemic issues have already been existing in the field that don't allow for harmony to be present. The Earth is systematically trying to restabilize herself in order to allow for an experience of us living in harmony with her. And so that also awakens in us the power to understand we're all part of the equation. No one is left out. And it's time for us to really see the bigger picture and allow for the return of this radical way of approaching everything as an expression of how deeply we allow ourselves to honor and coexist with the divine feminine. It's the inescapable and uncontrollable part of our existence. And it's even why certain rationalist philosophers, like Sir Francis Bacon, have tried to reduce the feminine and nature into simply a woman that needs to be resourced, exploited, taken from, in order to control this emanation of feminine wisdom that comes through everything. A very interesting shift that happened in the realm of philosophy and the way that we see reality, where we went from Sophia, the love of wisdom, to actually removing the feminine altogether. And from there, René Descartes declared, famously, "I think, therefore I am," meaning that the identity construct started to stabilize as something based on purely what the mind believes. And perception was equated with everything that exists in reality. When this rationalist wave emerged, everything that has been created since is also in alignment with this biased mentality, where we feel we can separate from the intuitive harmonic order of the universe. We can exploit and pull from natural resources and change life on the planet and even manipulate entire populations in order to control the sense of normalcy in reality. But this is why this truth can't actually be banished. It has to be remembered because it can never be forgotten, as it's always there. Life on earth continues to ebb and flow just like the nature of the divine feminine, because the earth will reset herself in order to prevent another dysfunctional state of being in which man tries to pretend they are God, or particularly the masculine attempts to usurp control over the nature of the feminine, which can't actually happen. Our entire cosmos goes through these revolutions, wars, and periods where everything changes in order to restore harmony, because that harmony can never be forgotten. And it's our calling as individual souls to look within and to actually ask ourselves, are we contributing to greater harmony, or aren't we? Are we afraid of this powerful, passionate, raw, and deeply harmonizing wisdom of the feminine, which is instructing us to simply come into balance with ourselves? And the way that we feel about the feminine reveals a whole lot about us, because if we fear the feminine, we actually fear our relationship to the feminine within ourselves. If we think the feminine is something that should be shamed, we feel a sense of shame regarding the connections to our own feeling state. If we feel the feminine is a lesser aspect of the system as a whole, then we feel our own feminine polarity is something that needs to be kept in the dark, because perhaps we're afraid of our feelings, or we've disowned aspects of us that encompass our deepest, most radical soul's nature. And so now is the time to pay respect to what the divine feminine energy represents, as it's always ready to bring healing, deeper love, nurturing, and wisdom through yourself and through reality, as it's always been there. We just need to open up our eyes, our minds, our hearts, and fully let ourselves be submerged in this realm of feminine knowing, and we will find the answers we need, the answers that our mind will never be able to find because they never existed in the realm of the mind in the first place.